Welcome to the Wrestle Fam Talk Show. I'm Ron.
I'm Bryce.
And today, me and Bryce are going to be doing the rebooking of Starrcade 1989. Future Shock is what they labeled that pay-per-view. Now, Bryce, 1989 was Daddy's favorite year of wrestling, especially in the National Wrestling Alliance. They had 5 pay-per-views that year. 4 were great. The Chi-Town Rumble, Wrestle War, the Great American Bash, Halloween Havoc. But there was one that was kind of a bummer. And that's why we're rebooking Starrcade 1989 Future Shock. 1989 started off hot for the National Wrestling Alliance. Rickety Dragon Steamboat, Ric Flair had their 3 greatest matches of all time against each other, trading the world title. You had Michael P.S. Hayes show up as a good guy, then turn on Lex Luger for the United States Championship early on in 1989. The Great Muta made a name for himself in 1989 in the National Wrestling Alliance. The Steiner Brothers became a team. The Fabulous Freebirds added a new member in Jimmy Jam Garvin. They also started a feud with the Road Warriors that they had continued from various other federations or promotions. But one of the iconic things that happened is when the Freebirds and the Samoan SWAT team, they beat up the Road Warriors in what was called the Marietta Massacre inside of a steel cage. Flying Brian Pillman made a name for himself in late 1989, battling Lex Luger for the United States title. And many more. We're going to dig right in here. Now, when we look at Starrcade 1989, I kind of put it together with 3 events. Starrcade 1989 was sandwiched in between what I think are the 2 greatest Clash of Champions that ever happened. Clash of Champions 9, the New York Knockout, and Clash of Champions 10, the Texas Shootout. At Clash of Champions 9, the New York Knockout, that's where you saw Ric Flair and Terry Funk have the I Quit match. Clash of Champions 10 is famous for when the Horsemen kicked Sting out and he hurt his knee. I remember watching Clash of Champions 10 as a child, and I thought it was awesome, except for Sting getting hurt. Years later, I watched Clash of Champions 9, and I thought, wow, what a great show. Then I found out there was Starrcade in between, and I couldn't wait to see what the matches would be. Come to find out, they did a round-robin tournament for some reason. They took 4 tag teams and 4 singles individuals, and they all wrestled each other during that broadcast, and it really didn't mean anything. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to keep the goal of what the NWA was doing at that time, but I'm going to make it into a pay-per-view that I would like to watch. The key thing that came out of Starrcade 1989 was Sting joining the Horsemen when the Andersons accepted him after his match with Ric Flair that night. He would also earn the title shot against Ric Flair in early 1990, but because his knee got hurt and the Horsemen turned on him, he didn't receive that shot. So I'm going to kind of keep that where Sting keeps that title shot. He's joining the Horsemen, things of that nature. One thing that really bothered me about Starrcade 1989 was the Great Muta. He had not lost a match. And on this night, he lost 3 times. He would soon leave the National Wrestling Alliance, possibly because of this night. So we're going to change his mind because the Great Muta should have stayed with the National Wrestling Alliance. They should have treated him better, and he should have been a top star for decades there. So we'll take a look at what Starrcade 1989 was. It was the round-robin tournament. The Steiner Brothers, Doom, the Samoan SWAT team, who filled in for the Skyscrapers because of Sid Vicious getting injured. It was supposed to be the Skyscrapers, Sid Vicious and Dan Spivey, and the Road Warriors. They all battled each other. Then for the singles matches, Ric Flair, Lex Luger, Sting, and the Great Muta. Sounds great. The matches did not live up to what it sounded like. They had to be short. There was tons of matches that night. In fact, Ric Flair beat the Great Muta in under 2 minutes to hand Great Muta his first loss. We're going to change that tonight. So what we're about to do is read off what me and Bryce thought of what Starrcade 1989 should have been.
Match number 1. The Fabulous Freebirds versus Eddie Gilbert and Tommy Rich.
That's right. We have the Fabulous Freebirds, Jimmy Jam Gart and Michael P.S. Hayes versus Hot Stuff and Tommy Rich. Reason we picked this match to start it off, there were a lot of great tag teams in the division of the National Wrestling Alliance. The Fabulous Freebirds always seemed to start a pay-per-view off. If you look at the history, they kick-started a lot of pay-per-views. And then we'll see in our second match, the singles match that we're going to have, that individual also kicked them off. So I think having those two back-to-back, and you'll see who I'm talking about when we get to match number 2. But first off, the Fabulous Freebirds, they're going to face Eddie Gilbert and Tommy Rich. They're going to pick up the win here tonight, Bryce, on this show. And the main reason is they want to bounce back. They had just lost the tag team titles to the Steiner Brothers, so they needed a big win. They had defeated every top team that year. So they were top of the line. They're in contention. So what I want to do is have them beat a team that's kind of a makeshift team, but they had been teaming for a while. They had been losing to a lot of the established teams. They're going to beat them quick, and there's a reason why, because later on in the night, that's not going to be the last that you heard of the Fabulous Freebirds.
Match number 2. Flying Bryman Pillman versus Mad Dogs Buzz Sawyer with Dragon Master.
Yeah. The Flying Brian was the wrestler that I was talking about earlier that you can kickstart a pay-per-view off, a big event off with him. Now, the reason we went with Flying Brian Pillman versus Mad Dog Buzz Sawyer was because at this time, Ric Flair and Sting had been feuding with what was called the J-Tex Corporation, which was Gary Hart's stable of wrestlers, which was the Great Muta, the Dragon Master, and at one time, Terry Funk. Now, what happened at Clash of Champions 9 is Terry Funk had lost the I Quit match to Ric Flair, and they pretty much kicked him out of the J-Tex Corporation. Enter Mad Dog Buzz Sawyer. He took his place, and the J-Tex Corporation soon became Gary Hart International. So his international stable, since he lost the Texas part of the J-Tex Corporation. Now, the reason we have Mad Dog is you're going to see him a lot battling in main events across the country and in non-televised events, and then you'll see him at Clash of Champions 10 inside the steel cage in a 6-man tag against the Horsemen. So you kind of want to showcase the Mad Dog, because I didn't feel like they showcased him. It's almost like he just showed up, since a lot of those matches weren't televised. The reason I got the Dragon Master out there instead of Gary Hart is because Terry Funk was on the announcer table on tonight doing the announcing. So I feel like he still has that hatred towards Gary Hart. When he was getting beat up, his ex-stablemates really didn't touch him. So I felt there was that kind of a respect between the Dragon Master and Terry Funk, and also through the Great Muta and Terry Funk. It was mainly Gary Hart and Lex Luger who had showed up that put a beating on Terry Funk as they were beating up Sting and Ric Flair at the same time. So what you do here is you have Mad Dog versus Flying Brian. Flying Brian had been helping Sting, had been helping Flair. So you kind of want to still have that established that, okay, he is still feuding with this stable. Here's the new stable member. Now, one thing that I noticed is the Andersons had came back at this time. And when they came back, there were a lot more good guys fighting bad guys. The J-Tex Corporation or Gary Hart International was outnumbered. So what I would do in this match is I would have the New Zealand militia, which is Jack Victory and Rip Morgan, come out and try to help Buzz Sawyer beat Flying Brian. Right there, you have 2 new members. It goes with the international name that Gary Hart's talking about. So you have 2 wrestlers from New Zealand. As they come out to try to interfere, that's when the Andersons come out to stop them. So you still have that affiliation between Flying Brian and the Andersons, because they did team up a lot in 6-man tags against Gary Hart's stable. I would say I would have Flying Brian win this one after all the confusion, because Flying Brian should have been a top star at this time. And you'll see later on, they ended up teaming him up with the Z-Man, and he kind of just fell into the tag team division and never took that step. So his matches against Lex Luger here in 1989 were pretty much his highest profile matches that he pretty much ever had, except for when he was cruiserweight champion or lightweight champion, whatever title they had at that time. A few years, probably around 91 is when he became that champion, the light heavyweight champion or cruiserweight, whatever they decided to call it. But here, I want to establish Flying Brian. I want him to win. I want him to get the revenge. You also debut two new bad guys for that group. And Terry Funk has yet to see Gary Hart yet. So that's going to be a key element later on in this pay-per-view. All right, match number 3. We have an 8-man tag. What do you think about that, Bryce?
I think it's going to be good.
Yeah, Bryce loves 8-man tags. So here we have Dr. Death Steve Williams. He's teaming up with the Z-Man and the Dynamic Dudes versus Mike Rotundo, who happens to be Bray Wyatt's dad, in the Samoan SWAT team, which was Rikishi. This was a young Rikishi. It was Fatu, Samu, and the Samoan Savage. So 3 of the Samoan SWAT teams and Mike Rotundo are going to be the opposition here with Sir Oliver Humperdinck in their corner. Reason I picked this for you, just for you, Bryce, is they had a 6-man tag. They had Dr. Death and the Midnight Express against the Samoan SWAT team at Halloween Havoc. I feel like let's up the ante and go with an 8-man instead of a 6-man. Now, Dr. Death is in a feud with the Samoan SWAT team. He's beating them in singles matches consistently. Z-Man had battled Mike Rotundo at the Halloween Havoc. And the Dynamic Dudes, they're a tag team that was kind of losing a lot at this time.
Yeah.
Now, at Starrcade 1989, even though the Samoan SWAT team had filled in for the Skyscrapers, they came really close to winning that round-robin tournament. They looked strong. So that's why I have these individuals in here. The Z-Man, I want to showcase him. He has history with Mike Rotundo. He's about to start teaming up with Brian Pillman in real life of what happened in the NWA. So I want to showcase that. I want him to have a strong look too if I'm going to still keep them teamed up, which at this moment, as I'm doing this one, we're pretending I am. We could always redo 1990 later on. But right now I want Z-Man looking good. I want Dr. Death looking good. Mike Rotundo is who they're going to look good against because Dr. Death's about to pick up a lot of wins on the Samoans. So I want the Samoans dominating the Dynamic Dudes. And that's why I have the bad guys winning this one as one of the Samoans pins the Dynamic Dudes. So still, like in real life, Starrcade 1989, the Samoan SWAT team looks strong. The Z-Man looks strong. Dr. Death Steve Williams looks strong. And they can have a future matchups and future history. Dynamic Dudes can take the loss because they really weren't going to do anything with Johnny Ace and Shane Douglas. What do you think about that match, Bryce?
I think it's good.
Yeah, good. I know you like those 8-man tags, so I threw that one in there. Get the people something a little bit different than just the regular singles and tag matches.
What if they had a 10-man tag?
That would be even better.
Yeah.
It'd be kind of crazy. We would have to see who else we would add into that. All right. Now we'll just move right on into match number 4. Now, before match number 4 happens, remember when I talked about this isn't going to be the last time you see the Fabulous Freebirds? That's because the Fabulous Freebirds come out. They have an interview. They talk about they don't know why the Road Warriors are receiving a tag title shot tonight. They're talking about how they picked up a victory against the Road Warriors at the Clash of Champions by disqualification. They don't see why Doom and the Midnight Express are about to go out there for that number 1 contendership match. Seeing that they beat the Midnight Express for the tag titles earlier that year in a tournament. And they had just defeated the tag team that Doom had beat, but they come up and they said, we beat them quicker. Doom has something to say. They come out and they talk about that it's their time. They want the tag shots because they're going to get that tag shot at the Clash of Champions 10. So you have the Fabulous Freebirds and Doom arguing, setting something up. What I loved back in the old style wrestling is they would have multiple feuds going on at that same time. So I want all these top tag teams just hating each other. And each of them have a reason to get a tag shot. Each of them have a good idea or say something that makes sense, to make you say, okay, yeah, they deserve a shot. And then when somebody else talks, you're thinking, oh, well, they're right, they deserve a shot. That way you keep the Steiner brothers busy. So that's why our number 4 match is going to be the tag team of Doom. And at this time, they're in masks. So no one knew they were Ron Simmons or Butch Reed. They were just Doom 1 and 2. They would lose their mask at Clash of Champions 10 against the Steiners. But here, Doom is facing the Midnight Express of Stan Lane and beautiful Bobby Eaton with Jim Cornette for a number 1 contendership shot. So I'm going to have Doom win. Surprisingly, on Starrcade 1989, even though Doom got the shot at Clash of Champions 10 just a month later, they lost every match in real life on this night. Why?
I don't know.
Yeah, you don't. Why would they lose if they're going to get a tag shot? Does that make sense?
No.
No. So we're going to have a win, and we're putting them in there with a great tag team that's going to make them look spectacular, and that's the Midnight Express. So Doom picks up the victory here. So they're the new number 1 contenders. Match number 5. I think you like this one, don't you, Bryce?
Yeah. Lex Luger versus Sting.
That's right. Lex Luger versus Sting for the United States title. There's the key element.
They got a lot of stuff in common.
They do. They were best friends.
Yeah.
And then Luger had turned bad this year, and he had started beating up Brian Pillman after matches, and Sting would come out and save him. So I say Luger puts the title on the line. Sting comes out victorious in this match. It's a clean win. No one interferes.
And he gets the United States title.
He gets the United States title, which means he's also the number 1 contender, which is a key element that I wanted to keep. Because we don't know that Sting's going to hurt his knee at this time a month later. So he wins that United States title. He keeps his number. He gains that number 1 contendership. And then he beats Luger. And it's going to be a great matchup. So that's why I chose number 5 as Lex Luger and Sting. Now, number 6. Who we got there?
Steiner Brothers versus Road Warriors.
With Paul Ellering.
Yeah.
For the tag team titles. This was the matchup everybody wanted to see in the tag division. But it was a short match. It didn't live up to it in the real life Starrcade. But here, we have plenty of time. This is the dream match. This is the number 1 and number 2 teams, whichever one you want to put number 1 or number 2, tag teams that ever lived. The Steiner Brothers and the Road Warriors for the tag team titles. I have the Steiners winning it. They won in the real life Starrcade. Why not have them win here? They don't have to win in a dominant performance. It could be a Clash of the Titans. It could be a roll-up. It doesn't have to be a high-impact move to put the Road Warriors away. Because at this time, the Steiners and the Road Warriors were collaborating together to fend off all the other bad guys. They even had an interview where they said, we're watching the Steiners' backs, and the Steiners are watching the Road Warriors' backs. So these are two friend tag teams going at it. You have the Steiner Brothers win, of course, because we might not know it now, but the Road Warriors would leave about a half year later to join the WWF at that time. And you're just building the Steiner Brothers up. They just won. What a great win. This was a match that needed to happen. This was a match that did happen, but let's give them a better match and for the World Tag Team titles.
And a longer.
That's right. They get a longer time. Now, this is where it gets crazy. The main event, Nature Boy Ric Flair.
Versus Great Muta.
Yep. With who?
With Gary Hart.
With Gary Hart for the world title. This was the match that needed to happen at this Starrcade. Muta kept coming in. He came in at the Great American Bash, beat Ric Flair. He helped Dirty Dick Slater in an earlier Clash of Champions hang Ric Flair, put bags over their heads, him and Sting's heads.
Mm-hmm.
He jumped Ric Flair at the end of the Terry Funk match at the previous Clash of Champions. Now, in house shows, they did this match, but no one saw him. The Great Muta is currently the television champion at this time. So what I would have, Ric Flair face the Great Muta. Now here's where Terry Funk comes into play. He sees Gary Hart. He promises Jim Ross, I'm not going to do anything, Jim. You can trust me. That is until late in the match, Gary Hart accidentally hits the Great Muta with the branding iron that Terry Funk used to carry. Terry Funk gets up and goes, not again, because he has respect for the Great Muta. He starts chasing Gary Hart around. After Hart had hit the Great Muta, Ric Flair pins him. So it makes Muta still look strong, but you blame that loss onto Gary Hart. So Funk's attacking Gary Hart. Muta's out. He's laid out because of that iron. Ric Flair can't even get up in time, and Gary Hart's guys are out. They're helping get Terry Funk off of Gary Hart. They're attacking Ric Flair. This allows the Andersons and Sting to enter the ring. Clean house. That way, you still have that ending where the Horsemen accept Sting into their group as Horsemen. And the reason you lay the Great Muta out is I don't want the Great Muta fighting anybody, because in the next videos, or whatever we want to call this, the family talk shows that we do here, we're going to redo 1990. And we got big things for the Great Muta. So you lay him out. He's not in there. He's not fighting good guys. He's not fighting bad guys. He's knocked out. Terry Funk obviously is a good guy now. And you have more of the bad guys because the New Zealand militia's out there helping the Dragon Master, helping Buzz Sawyer fight off the Andersons and Sting. And once the Andersons and Sting chased them away, they're in there with Ric Flair. The Great Muta slides out. The refs are helping him. And they show Sting. They say, hey, Sting's part of the Horsemen now. So it ends the night the way that it ended in the real life Starrcade.
Yeah.
You have anything else to add? No? They can't see you shaking your head. All right. Well, I think that was fun. I'm glad that we did it. Did you learn a little bit about 1989?
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, I hope everyone out there listening enjoyed this.
My favorite match was the first one.
The Freebirds?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because I remember we watched the Clash of Champions 9 together a few weeks ago, and you liked their red and black pants.
Yeah.
One had red and one had black.
I like the red one.
Mm-hmm. Was there any other favorite matches?
5, 6, and 7.
So Lex Luger and Sting, and then the Steiners and Road Warriors and Ric Flair group. Just in the Ric Flair and the Great Muta. Just mentioning those, that is just an awesome 3 matches to end the show.
Yeah.
That's a great way, because Starrcade was equivalent for NWA as WrestleMania was for the WWF at this time. And if you look at the history, it quickly just became tournaments, lethal lotteries, cool concepts, wrong pay-per-view to do it on, I think. Anything else to add?
No.
No? All right. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed this. I hope you listen again. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.